guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 252, and this is a show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week, and this week I had a pretty average haul, 20 books, so let's get started with number 20, and again this is episode 252 of Comic Uno. So yeah, number 20 for me this week was Wonder Woman issue 52. I just don't know what direction they're going with this book. I think they're just waiting for G. Willow Wilson to, obviously be the new creative team or new writer for this book, but wasn't really interested in the villain or Artemis, which I was surprised. I thought she would bring some life to the issue, but couldn't get into this one. But I did like the artwork. I thought that was strong, and I like these new pages. I like that it feels old school and thicker, the pages. So I do like that about the DC Comics. So that one I'm going to give 2 stars, and that is number 20. Moving on to number 19, which is another DC book, Titans issue 24. I like the team, I like the roster, but not feeling the chemistry with this one, which is weird because we have characters that should have chemistry, like Beast Boy and Donna and Dick, who have worked together in the past, but I think they jump into the action too much and we don't understand the dynamics well enough to really get into stories like this at this point. So for me, I gave Titans issue 24 2.5 stars. Once again, I think artwork is solid here too, especially for an action issue, which is why it made number 2 or second worst instead of last worst. Alright, moving on to number 18. Which is The Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, issue 22. Just the artwork is very lackluster for me, and you could tell this is kind of a C-rated book for Marvel instead of an A-lister or a flagship book, which really you shouldn't feel that way with the art for any book, but with this one especially, it just doesn't feel up to a good tier for Marvel artwork. So didn't really like the art. The story is okay. It's kind of by the numbers though. How many times have we seen a clone-like story? I liked Normie in this issue, and the one thing I liked about this issue was the joke that Peter gave saying, hey, if you're gonna end up with an Osborn, like, their genes kind of suck with hair. And then MJ's like, what? Why did you say that? And then Peter's like, what? The kid's hair is weird. So I like that battle. But other than that, still not doing it for me with this series. And I think this could be a lot better of a series because you got some great characters here. But like I said, the artwork really brings it down for me. So The Amazing Spider-Man issue 22, Renew Your Vows, gets 2.5 stars. And that is number 18. Moving on to number 17, which is Xena, the Warrior Princess, issue 7. Just kind of a forgettable story of this oracle, or this person looking for an oracle. Didn't really care about that story, and they focus a lot on that besides Gabrielle and Xena, and I care more about them than I do about this side story. So I think they try to explain that too much. The artwork's good though. Really love the artwork for this book. I like the expressions for Xena and Gabrielle especially. And I think they intertwined the backstory of this character well, the one they were trying to describe. So that was good. So overall I gave it 3 stars. Not my favorite issue of Xena, and like I said, a bit forgettable, but if you enjoy Xena, I think you'll like the issue. But for me, as someone who just kind of came into Xena franchise with this issue, it wasn't as interesting. Moving on to number 16. Glad to see this not worst pick. I really liked the first issue, and then I didn't really like the middle issues, and I thought this was a better conclusion though, and that is Eternity Girl issue 6. Artwork is strange, and that's something I like about this book. It's very young animals, and it's trippy, the artwork. And I feel like you finally get into Caroline's head again, and that's something I felt like the other issues didn't do as well, is dealing with the themes of her body and how she feels about her body. And that's something I really liked about issue 1. But this issue, I think, wraps it a bit better. So overall, I gave this one 3 stars, but I feel like this could have been a 2-issue series and would have been stronger. So, or even a large one-shot. So Eternity Girl issue 6 gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 15, which is Death or Glory issue 4. Back a little bit lower. I really liked, I believe, the last issue I really enjoyed. But this one is just more action oriented. I didn't care about the Amish ladies trying to chase them. I've seen Image Comics do it better, like Revival. I really like their story. There's like this mother and daughter who were part of the Amish community, and I really like that. So seeing them try to do it again, I just had to compare it to Revival. But yeah, I don't love the villains, or you know, who they're trying to escape here, but I still like our main characters a lot, and the actual getaway was interesting, especially with the artwork, some good driving scenes that we haven't really seen yet with a book that's so focused on cars, and or at least promoted that way. So Death or Glory issue 4 gets 3 stars. Good action, a little disappointed with the story though. Alright. Moving on to number 14, which is Catwoman issue 2. I want to like this series so much more than I do, because I really like Joelle Jones as a creator. I like her as a writer. I really enjoyed Lady Killer, and I love her as an artist. But this one, it doesn't have a direction as much as I thought it would. You know, it's following the events of Batman issue 50, but all Catwoman does is, harp over her romance with Batman. Batman obviously is doing the same thing, but I feel like in that story, there's something else interesting going on. There's the jury duty aspect. Here, I don't care about this woman who has hiring all these Catwomen. So I think that's why I feel less attached is just the main arc that's going on. Even though I think I understand Catwoman's emotions, and I think they could be executed a little better, but that is actually the stronger part of this book. And the artwork's gorgeous. I mean, that's one thing I'll say. I really like the art and just the facial expressions. I like the action. I don't really love Catwoman's new suit. I think it's very glossy, and I don't know, it doesn't work for me. But I do like the actual art style. So gonna give Catwoman issue 2 3 stars. Of course, we'll still continue to pick it up. I see a lot of potential with the book, but I was really excited for Catwoman and hasn't really made that excitement yet. Alright, moving on to number, let me see, we're up to number, hold on, alright, 13, which is Supergirl, issue 21. I thought this was an improvement from what we're getting, but still kind of a little bit too much in the DC Rebirth area, where you still have remnants of that series, which obviously makes sense. It's a continuation of the series, but I hate that the whole opener is like, I'm angry, Supergirl's always angry. And yes, she has trauma, but I feel like the way that Supergirl's been treated in New 52 and Rebirth, all she is angry, and she's more than that, and she deals with her trauma differently than becoming a Red Lantern. So I still have remnants of that in this issue, and I don't really care about the villain from Superman. What's his name? Rogel Zar. Don't quite care about him, so having this whole story happening because of him, I don't know if I'm invested, but on the flip side of that, I like there's a direction for Supergirl. I think that's the reason the Rebirth title got canceled, was because there was no direction for that series. But here at least there's something for Supergirl to do. And I do see some glimmer of happiness, like when she got to see Crypto. I like that there's more of a dialogue with other DC superheroes like Green Lantern, obviously Superman. So I'm a little torn on the issue. I do think it's an improvement, but at the same time it's not the level I want Supergirl to be at, a character I really enjoy. Also, artwork, weirdly enough, I feel like Supergirl's a little bit too expressive. There's she's like, in a lot of the scenes, and we get to see that, here. Hopefully that improves a little bit. So, yeah, overall, gonna give Supergirl issue 21 3 stars. Obviously, we'll continue to pick it up. I do think it's an improvement, but not at the level I want it to be. Moving on to number 12, which is The Dead Hand, issue 5. I really like the opener here. I do think there's a lot of exposition describing who this boy is. I wish they could have described that in a different way, but I like that I believe her name is Harriet, the daughter, is in the know now. I think that made some more progression in the book, because it's a very slow book, which fits the Cold War aesthetic, and, well, not even aesthetic, but Cold War connection to this book. So for me, it's 3.5 stars. I do like the artwork a lot for this book as well. I think it fits the tone well. So the Dead Hand issue 5 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 11, which is Superman issue 2. Interesting cover I got here. I like Adam Hughes. Lois's face. So yeah, with this issue, we get to see a bit of a slower issue. We get to see the aftermath, I guess, of learning that Earth is in the Phantom Zone and the other heroes are being harmed because of it. And I liked Superman's inner monologue about his wife and how he feels about Earth being in the Phantom Zone. So I enjoyed that, but definitely a slow burn. Yeah, I guess comparing it to the Dead Hand with this issue, not a ton happens. But I like the artwork. I think this is, you know, Summer Reyes' best work here. So really enjoy the artwork. And I think it fits the tone of also what Gleason's doing in, I think he's in Action Comics he's working on. Action Comics, which is weird because Gleason was on Superman, so that's why I had to think for a second. But yeah, Superman issue 2 gets 3.5 stars for me. Moving on to number 10, which is Detective Comics issue, what are we up to? 986. I got the Batmobile cover because I like Mark Brooks' artwork, and I had to flip it this way to get the number. But yeah, with this issue, if you like The Outsiders, you get some glimmer of it. You get Katana in this issue, obviously Black Lightning. Don't love how this book is treating Batgirl, though. She feels so much like a sidekick, like she has to listen to people. It's like, no, Batgirl's always been on her own and has always fought against Batman, and there's never been a question about that. And even in this book, like, Batman's like, no, Batgirl's right. I should be doing this. So, you know, Batgirl's always been the voice of reason, so it's kind of weird for Black Lightning to be like, no, girl, you know, let me talk, you know? I felt like that was weird. But there's parts I really liked about it, like Cassandra fighting and having more screen time or panel time in this book. And I do like that they're trying to bring back the Outsiders in some way. So for me, it's a middle ground book. There's stuff I like about it, but again, the Batgirl stuff I think could have been better. I'm going to turn it the correct way. So I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. But overall, it's I guess solid story as this kind of gap as we find a new creative team for Detective Comics. Moving on to number 9, which is Bloodshot Salvation, issue 12. This is the last issue of Bloodshot Salvation, which got me into Valiant Comics. Never was able to find a book that was new reader friendly like this, and made me feel so attached. So I like what they did with this book. Overall, the ending is okay. You know, it's nothing really explosive, kind of by the numbers conclusion. But I like this family. I like that we get to see them happy by the end. And it ties all the loose ends that needs to be tied. I also feel like the pencils aren't as strong as they were, especially because that was one of the things I loved about this book was the flashbacks in the present time and the 2 different art styles we got to see with that. So artwork's a little weaker than that premiere issue. But, like I said, 3.5 stars, definitely a series worth picking up if you want to get into Valiant. And I'll probably pick up the next Bloodshot book to see if the family will still be part of it, because that's the aspect I really liked about it. Alright, moving on to number 8, which is the Adamantium Agenda Hunt for Wolverine. Yeah, so we get to see the conclusion of Hunt for Wolverine, this mini-series, and finally something happens. That's one of my biggest problems with these mini-series. Like, why did I have to read them? And here, you actually had to read it, but that's also the negative of this book, is that you get a really good conclusion, and you're like, well, where is this gonna lead us? Like, where are we gonna find the missing pieces here? And it takes a while to get to those moments. Like, I really like the final act, but everything else leading up to it kind of felt fillerish to me. And also the artwork is, it's okay for me. It's solid, but I feel like because the story feels like such a A-list Avengers story, I want the artwork to match that. And it doesn't with some of the coloring. Some of the shading I didn't really like, so or I would say more of the glares I didn't like about it. So But yeah, moving on to the big stuff in this issue. We find out that Sarah Kinney, who's Laura's, least carried her, is actually her mother. So Laura's not a complete clone, which was really interesting, and I think Tom Taylor's the only person who could do that. And if you read All New Wolverine, it was this really nice piece to this great story that really was about Laura and her mother, especially if you got up to Orphan X. So I really enjoyed that aspect, and to see more of Sarah is always great. I love the small relationship we got to see with them. So it's always nice to see it referenced. And yeah, so Laura's not a complete clone, and technically is just the daughter of Wolverine. I thought that was really interesting. It gives her even more of her own identity, which I like. And then the other thing is that there is an X-Men who's not a mutant and is a sleeper agent. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. But where are we going to, continue this? That's my question. I hope it's not one of those things like Spider-Man. For the longest time, that original series, like, well, who's the other Miles Morales? And then when we got the sequels, like, I didn't need to know who that other Miles Morales was. But, I don't want to have this big cliffhanger never resolved. Maybe in that one shot we will, or Tom Taylor will pick it up in another series, but it was interesting, but a little disappointing that we had to wait until this last issue. I kind of wish this was the first issue and we had the 4 issues to deal with this. But yeah, gave this one 3.5 stars just because of that. It's kind of bittersweet ending for this series. Alright, moving on to number 7, which is The Flash, issue 52. Love the artwork here. This is the artist I wish that was on the series all the time. Just some really great work here. I love the expressions. I love kind of the darker tone the inker goes for and the colorist goes for here. Really like it, but also feels like classic Flash. Like I was talking about earlier, DC has changed its print to these thicker pages, and that kind of feels classic to me. As you're reading this story about, the rogues, and you get to see Barry connecting with Iris more, and Iris having these memories about their wedding, which I really like that scene. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very solid issue to get back to where it was after a really big event. Hopefully we still get to see the ramifications of that event, but I thought this was a solid issue. So giving this one 4 stars. Hopefully this artist stays on the book for a while, because like I said, I really like his artwork. So that was number 7, I believe. And we're moving on to number 6, which is the Spider-Man Annual, issue 1. If you've missed Miles Morales, he's been gone, his series, for a couple of months. This was a really good kind of filler issue. I enjoyed it. We got to see an old story with Miles during Secret Invasion, I thought was fun. We get to see Ganke trying to pass his driver's test. So it's just classic Miles Morales that honestly I missed throughout the whole entire Bendis run of Miles being in the 616. So this was just a breath of fresh air for me. And hopefully we get an announcement of a new Miles Morales book soon. So I gave this one 4 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Strangers in Paradise XXV, issue 5. Would have been higher if there wasn't so much exposition, but the exposition was kind of fun because we get to see Tambi talk about Cleopatra, and you're just like, why does she talk about Cleopatra? What does this have to do with the Parker girls? And then you find out how it's connected, and how Terry Moore just wants to talk about how badass Cleopatra is. But I liked how he kind of brought it in, and what I really especially enjoyed and why it's in my top 5 is the way Katchu reacts to it, because she's definitely us in this moment. She's like, why the hell are you talking about Cleopatra right now? How's this connected to anything? So she definitely says the things that the audience members are saying, so Terry Moore knows and is aware that this is exposition. So I like that, and I think that's why it ends up working, and I like that Katchu misses Francine, and she's ends up, working with Tambi, and not trusting Tambi, because she was trying to protect her children and her wife. So, I love this series, and I thought this was a solid issue. It wasn't the best issue of Strangers in Paradise, but it was a necessary issue to kind of learn more about this mystery of Stephanie and the Parker girls. Moving on to number 4. a book that's really gotten a lot better for me, and that is Sideways issue 7, really owning into that this is a Spider-Man book, and I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I'm enjoying it. And one thing I didn't like about this book is how cliche it was. And it was cliche on purpose, and it played with superhero tropes, but now I feel like it's finally found its own identity with Derek's mother dying. And this is all the aftermath, is Derek dealing with his emotions and, you know, pushing people away, pushing his father away, pushing Ernie away, because he doesn't know what to do with these feelings, and then at the same time he's guilty that he pushed his mother away. The only negative of this issue, honestly, was the special guests. It kind of felt out of place. Why do we always have to have special guests in these New Age of Heroes books? We don't need it. I think it's just like, stick with Derek, stick with Ernie, and that would have been even higher for me this book. So also the artwork for me, it doesn't feel completely rendered at times. It just kind of feels blurry, some of the pencils, so that's another nitpick, but it still stays true to the tone that we've been getting with Sideways, so I've kind of gotten used to it. But yeah, Sideways issue 7 gets a solid 4 stars, definitely finding itself finally, which I'm happy about. Moving on to number 3, which is Nancy Drew issue 3, a book I just fallen in love with very quickly, and I love this artwork. I love how cartoony it is, but not, you know, still feels mature. It's not so cartoony that it feels like a kid book, but I like the level of it. It's a mature cartooniness. It fits for Nancy Drew, and I love these characters. What I really like, what Thompson has been able to do is creating this ensemble cast and making you want to care about all these characters, newer characters for the books, and Nancy herself. You know, we get some really good emotion in depth here about her mother's death, and I really like her in George. I like their conversation where Nancy's like, I gotta go pee, and then she doesn't, and she just cries, and George is like, you don't have to hide that, you know, you're human, you don't have to hide crying, like, you're allowed to be upset, you don't have to always be this stone cold detective. And I like that, and I just like the friendships a lot. I like the romances building, and this dynamic is so good for this book. And the mystery building, you know, what did happen to Nancy's mom, or, you know, how that's connected to that new character's mom. So 4.5 stars for me. Really enjoying this book. So that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 3. I love this book. I just love what this creative team is doing. It just puts everything you know about Spider-Man on its head. You know, it's still familiar, but it's new at the same time. And we get to see that with Peter having another clone, kind of, with this new experiment. And, you know, Peter at first is just like, this is awesome. He actually is me. We did the whole entire rock, paper, scissors, and we both picked scissors. Like, he's me. And then he realizes after talking to Dr. Connors, no, you know, something always has to go wrong. And Peter's gonna have to be Spider-Man without his powers, which is gonna be a lot of fun. So I just love this story. I love how fresh it is, but it's so nostalgic at the same time. You have a scene with Mary Jane and Peter in every issue, which I love too. And then Ollie's artwork is really great for this book as well. I like the expressions he gives. It's funny, this book, like seeing Thompson and his ex-girlfriend meeting up to bowl together, and I just really like the expressions there as well. I love that hey, I'm an expert bowler because I brought my bowling ball. So yeah, I enjoyed a lot of the fun scenes here. So 4.5 stars for me, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, and that is Fantastic Four issue 1. I did an in-depth review for this for more information, but I enjoyed this issue a lot. Even though we didn't get to see the Fantastic Four fully until the end, I really liked you know, this kind of circle story, this 360 it takes, where with the beginning of the issue, yeah, the Yancey Street gang saying the Fantastic Four is back, and Human Torch gets excited about it, and things like, I know Reed is gone, and we have to move on, and Human Torch doesn't want to move on. And then, you know, the big surprise moment, which hopefully this wedding ends up happening, that the Thing asks Alicia to marry him, and then he says to Johnny, hey, will you be my best man? You think this is going to be the best moment showing how much of bros they are? And Johnny doesn't take it well. He's like, no, that's Reed's spot. And that's where it got me. I was like, all right, I'm sold on this book. And then we had Reed and Sue give a little signs like, no, we are out there. So hopefully next issue we'll actually get to see the Fantastic Four, which is why I felt like it wasn't a perfect issue. And also, a lot of this has happened in Marvel 2-in-1, but I feel like this issue did it better than Marvel 2-in-1. But I love the artwork here as well. I thought the Sarah Bocelli is a great fit here. There is another inker at one point, though, and you can kind of tell at that point. There's like a separate story where is like the past where Johnny ends up singing to save the day. But you can tell it was a different inker there. I thought it was a little bit darker with the inking on that page, so that was my one nitpick in the artwork. And I even like the Dr. Doom story here. Usually I don't love secondary stories, and it still wasn't one of my favorites, but it's like, oh, okay, cool, Dr. Doom's back, and he's totally Dr. Doom that we knew from old school Fantastic Four. So I like that, and I like the artwork for that one as well. So for me, I gave this 4.5 stars, and this was my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and this is Comic Uno. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.